Bright QT. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. Now let's talk about our next topic here, that is characteristics of rights. Now students, before this we were talking about what are rights, right? In our introduction part we understood the meaning of rights. So we can define rights as the basic principles of a civil society. We also learned that these are the freedom and powers that are necessary for personality development and the common good of living beings or humans living in a civil society, right? So this is something that a person should have, and they should assure, or they should make it a way that no one can take it away from them. The government that we are referring to, right? So we already have discussed about why rights are important. In a brief, we definitely have talked about it. We also understood the term that is fundamental rights. Now here in this topic, we are going to understand that what are the characteristics of rights. So when we are referring to the characteristics of rights or the features of rights, there are three features or characteristics that have been mentioned in the book. So one by one, we are going to understand all these characteristics, and then we'll also have a look at the examples for each of these characteristics. Now the first point here is that rights are claims of person over the society and government. Now we have to understand that these are the claims of a person over other fellow beings, over any other person living in the society. It can be over the society as a whole, over any community, or over the government. Now definitely we have to understand this point in detail here. So we'll have a look at these examples. Now here we must understand that these rights, they are for everyone. Now in India, taking the example of our country so that we can easily relate with it, we know that each and every person living in our society, come from different backgrounds, right students? So let's say people from Hindu community, people from Muslim community, Sikh community, and so on, from various religions, diverse backgrounds, they are living together. Now if any particular religion, they feel that they are being discriminated against, or their rights are being violated, or in a sense they are not being treated equally, right? We have already talked about the human rights in our previous topic. We understood that example. So in any of these situations that we are referring to, a person, if he or she has his rights, right? So definitely he can move towards the court. He can go to the court and ask for a good solution from the court, right? He can ask for his basic rights. He can ask for the equality. If he is facing some inequality in the society that definitely exists in our society even today, in modern times that we are referring to, right students? So here we have to understand that in our society, let it be any person XYZ, or let it be any community XYZ, or let it be the government that is in power. It can be the government in power or any other person that we are referring to. So we have the rights that we can claim over these people, we can claim over the society, the community, or the government. But since we are talking about the claim, we have to understand that to claim a right, it must be reasonable. Now, why do we need to understand this point? The term reasonable here is really important to understand. Now, a reasonable right does not allow us to hurt or harm others. Now, it's not like that, if we have certain rights, then we can go and move to the court and ask for our rights and just harm or hurt other people in this whole process or in this whole procedure. It's not like that. So the claim that we are making, the claim that we are making for a right, it should be reasonable claim. Let us try to understand it through few examples that's also given in the book. Now the example in your book, if you see, we have one example that says that you have a right to play any game in your garden, but you do not have the right to break your neighbor's windows or trample with their garden. Now, do you think it is important, or is it not important? The example that's given in the book. Definitely it's important for us to understand the term that is reasonable. So here we have the right to play in the neighborhood that we are living in. You might have few friends with whom you can go on the road and you can play in your own neighborhood, right? That is our basic right. We have the freedom to move from one place to another. So definitely we have the freedom to go out and play with our friends. But do we have the right to break the windows of a person? If it's accidental, then it's other situation. It's a different situation. But if knowingly we are harming someone, so is it good or is it bad? So if knowingly we are breaking the window of one person, do we have that right? No, students. So likewise, we also have to understand that the rights that we have should be used very wisely. We should make a claim that should be reasonable, right? It should make some sense whenever we are talking about our rights or whenever we are trying to claim our rights. Now, apart from this, we also have a right to play music till late at night. It is your home, it is your music system. So definitely you can say that, okay, it's my right to play music at this particular time because I can't sleep, so I'll play music. But do you have the right to disturb your neighbors who don't like or they are not liking the loud music and they do not prefer that? Do you have that right, students? No, we do not have that right. So here you have to understand this thin line that is between being reasonable here while making or claiming our rights or being unreasonable here. We have to understand that whole concept. So definitely whatever rights that we are claiming should be reasonable. It must be reasonable. So this was our first characteristic. Now the second characteristic here is that rights have to be recognized and sanctioned by the society we live in. Again, we have to understand that we are not living, in a lone planet where only one individual is living, right? And there's no one around him. So here we have to understand that we are living in a community. We are living in a society. So when we are living in a society, it's not that each and every individual should have a separate rights, according to their own preferences, according to their own wishes. It's not like that. Since we are living in a community, we are living in a society, so the rights, they have to be recognized, they have to be fully obeyed and sanctioned by the people living in the society. So we are not living in isolation as mentioned in your book, or we are not living lonely, right? So it's not a lone planet here, people living far away from each other. No, it's not like that. So when we are living in a society, we need the consensus of each and everyone living there. So here we have to understand that the rights, they have to be recognized. And the term sanctioned here, it means that it has to be, the rights have to be approved by everyone living in the society. It should be in the favor of the common people. Now he also must get along peacefully with all the other members in the community. Correct or not? That is why we are referring our society as a civil society, when we can live peacefully with with each other, and also we can avoid the chaos, right? A society definitely has certain rules and regulations which everyone must follow and respect. Again, another important point that you have to keep in mind. Now there are certain rules and regulations that we all know. The laws that have been made in our country, we have to follow that law and we have to respect it. It is a must. It is the collective responsibility of the members of the society to cooperate with each other. So when we are trying to talk about our rights, firstly you should know that the claim should be reasonable. Then we have to understand that all the rights should be recognized and sanctioned or approved by all the individuals. Might be some of them like it, might be some of them not like it. Sometimes it can be in favor of the minority and it's not in the favor of majority. So people can disagree there, people can have variety of opinions over it, but then it has to be approved by the society that we are living in. And the rules and regulations that have been made in our society, it must be followed by each and every individual. And that is how we can live peacefully. Now these are some of the points that you need to understand here, right students, when we are talking about the citizens' rights. The third characteristic here is that rights become meaningful even when guaranteed by the Constitution, if enforceable by law. Now here, this is the most important point that you need to understand. It might confuse you a bit, but then I'll just clarify it in very simple sense. Now here in our Constitution, students, in your later topics, you are going to learn about the fundamental rights, the basic rights that have been given to the individuals in the society, right? So we have 6 main fundamental rights. Apart from that, there are so many basic rights that have been given to the individuals living in our country, okay? But our Constitution has guaranteed it. But is it enforceable by the law? Has it been enforced by the law? Has it been approved there lawfully? So it has to be we have to understand here that the rights, it only become meaningful, okay, when we see that it has been enforced by the law, okay? And law here, what does that mean? So when we are talking about law, we can link it with the judiciary or not, students. So our judiciary, it has the duty or the responsibility of interpreting the law. They have to see that all the laws that have been legislated or executed by the executive team or the executive head, it is being followed properly in the society. It has been executed in a good manner. They have to interpret the laws. They have to understand if the laws are good for the welfare of the common people or not. So here we have to see that though it has been guaranteed by the Constitution, it has been mentioned in the Constitution, but it should be enforced by the law. All these rights should be enforced by the law. This is one important point that you have to understand. Now here, definitely you have learnt earlier, students, about so many privileges that people they used to enjoy. Now here we are talking about rights and other term that is privileges, as you will find in your book. So you have to understand this thin difference, the basic difference between the two terms. First one being the rights and the second term being the privileges, okay? So you have to understand that when we are talking about these two terms, the meanings here, they are meanings of these two terms, they are different. So in our society, there was a time when we go back, when we look at the history of our own country, we see that there were certain sections that had special privileges, right? And it did not apply to the common people. So when we are talking about the modern India part, or when we are talking about the ancient part, or taking the example of other countries as well. So when we talk about the American history, if you remember, you already have or you might learn in history about the French Revolution, right? So you have seen that how certain section of the society, be it the men, they had the right to vote, and women, they did not have the right to vote for a long period of time. They had to fight for their rights. They had to claim their right there, right? And they were fighting that they should also be treated equally like the men. So history certainly gives us certain different examples that shows that certain section of our society, they had certain privileges. Now these privileges, obviously it's quite different from the rights, the basic rights that we are talking about, okay? So here we should understand that there should not be any privileges given to a certain section of the society. There should be equality between different sections of community, and that is how peace will prevail in our society or in our community that we are living. Okay? Now here, students, when we are talking about the Indian history, right? So talking about the modern India part, if you remember, you already have learnt about the caste discrimination. You already have learnt about the discrimination on the basis of economic status or gender differences. You have learnt in political science also about the gender differences, right, students? This distinction between male and female, the stereotypes, the discrimination that happens in our society, that women were meant to stay at home and do all the household chores, and men, they were supposed to work outside home, the discrimination that happened in the society, the social inequalities that existed in our country in very simple terms. So when we are talking about the discrimination based on caste, What can be the best example that you can think of? Now, you can have certain examples when you look around in your own society. You might see some people might practice this today also, might be practicing it today, but definitely it existed in the early history of our country. What was that? The best example can be untouchability. So you have heard the term Harijans, you have heard the term Dalits as we refer to them today. Now, when we are talking about the history of our country, students, untouchability was practiced in our country. So there was a certain section in our society that was not allowed to enter the house of the Brahmins. They were not allowed to use the wells, the public toilets, or let's say to enter the temples, right? They were not supposed to enter certain villages where upper caste people they used to live. So what is this? This is a kind of social inequality that existed based on the caste discrimination. Just because people they belong to the lower caste, they were not supposed to touch the upper caste. They were not supposed to stand in front of the upper caste. They were not supposed to enter the villages where these upper caste people were living, or to use anything that belonged to the upper caste community. So, do you think was it a correct practice? No. So, here to protect the rights of these individuals, of these people, these communities, definitely our constitution thought about it very thoroughly. And therefore, they decided that untouchability should be abolished, completely abolished from our society. So, in our Article 17, as you will learn later on, that untouchability has been completely abolished, stating about these different facts. Right, students? So this is how the constitution has guaranteed that we can protect the rights of the minorities, of these Dalit communities, of the untouchables who are not being treated equally in the society. And these untouchables now, if they are treated badly, definitely they can move to the court and they can claim their right. Now this is a reasonable right that we are referring to. Correct or not, students? So here you have to understand these points, the characteristics of rights that we have learned till now. So in India, it has been ensured that, after independence, when the constitution was made, it was ensured that citizens, they enjoy the privileges that were offered by the state on uniform basis. What does this uniform basis mean? It means that everyone should enjoy these privileges, these rights equally on uniform basis, in uniformity. Okay. Now, if these rights were infringed or violated, each and every citizen who feel that their rights have been violated, right? So they can go to the court. They can move to the court directly and they can ask for help. They can ask for what process that they have to follow lawfully in order to challenge that person who is misbehaving or who is treating or discriminating them. Okay. Now, these are certain points that we have learned here in the characteristics of rights. The next topic that we are going to learn, students, is why do we need rights? So, thank you very much.